This is Jonathan Lane from Fan Film Factor, and today I am here with George and Anya. George, can you solve one of the great mysteries of fan films? How do you pronounce your last name?
Very simple. It's just pronounced Kayan.
Kayan. Okay. It's a lot of vowels to make a Kayan sound, I got to tell you.
The Armenian, yeah.
Armenian. I was going to ask you what was the origin of that. Are you a second-generation Armenian? Have you been here quite a while? How did the parents and forebears come here?
Yeah, my grandfather came from Armenia, and then my dad was born here, and then I was born here.
And where do you guys live? You're in the New York City area, right?
Yeah, we're on Long Island.
Oh, Long Island. Okay.
Ah.
Yes, I grew up in New York. You can say Long Island and New York if you have a New York accent. But cool. So, but you're in the area, where New York goes from being like lots and lots of ridiculously tall buildings to actually suburban homes. You live in a nice little family community, right?
Yeah, we're right on the border. We're like 20 minutes away from the city.
So you actually have like fresh air and stuff like that.
Yeah, right now we do. Yeah.
Alrighty, so George and Anya are a father-daughter fan film combination. Your fan films are named currently Starship Antyllus. But before that, I mean, George, you were making fan films way back in the early 1990s, weren't you?
Yes, 1992 was the first year I did my first, Star Trek movie.
And how old were you back then?
I was in my 20s.
And you had your mom and your dad in your Star Trek film, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't an automatic thing. I actually was going to audition other people, which I did, and I wanted a female captain, and keep in mind this was before Voyager, and I really did want a female captain, and everyone I auditioned, they didn't quite turn out right for various reasons, and my mom, who actually watched Star Trek during its initial run, was a huge fan. I just ended up turning to her and said, "You know, Mom, I can't think of a more qualified person than you. How about I give you like a page of dialogue, we'll do a screen test, and if it works out, would you be interested in playing the captain?" And long story short, she nailed it and said, "Okay, I'll do it. Just keep in mind I'm working full time. You'll have to, film around my schedule."
So it wasn't just nepotism. She earned the part. That's good to know.
Yeah, she really did. Yeah, maybe one day I'll post her screen test, and right from the get-go, although she's wearing glasses and, is just kind of just learning the lines, she really was the captain. And my dad was kind of a different story. He kind of got dragged into it.
I sort of figured.
My dad, needs to protest, and then he'll do it, if you know what I mean. So he was like, I don't want to do this. This is, crazy. And then he's like, okay, I'll do it.
But your mom really got into the role. I've seen those fan films. And we'll talk about those at some later point. Those are going to have their own long interview because I definitely want to feature those, as their own separate thing. But today we're going to talk more about Starship Antyllus, and more specifically, because we've talked about Starship Antyllus before, I want to talk about Anya. You're what? You're 10 years old?
Yes.
And your dad has basically been making Star Trek fan films for your entire life, right?
That's correct.
Now, I want you to go back, Anya. I want you to think back to, when you were first old enough to realize that your dad might be a little different than the other dads of the other friends that you had. About how old were you when you first realized that, Daddy's making Star Trek fan films? That's not quite normal. Or was it always normal for you?
I've grown up with so many sets and so many scripts and, editing and everything that it kind of was just normal. And, it's definitely different, but I thought it's normal. It's not, unusual to me because I'm used to it by now. And I've been in plenty of them. I've been around many sets. I've built many sets. I've helped my dad with scripts and editing things. And so I've lived Star Trek my entire life. And I make my own projects sometimes. I do what he does, but it's because I'm just used to it by now.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, the thing is, I have a son. I have a son who's 9 years old, and he likes watching Star Trek with me. But he's got his own thing. He's into Minecraft, and God, is he into Minecraft? He's just started robotics. I would love for him to be more interested in Star Trek fan films and such, but he's got to live his own life. And, as a father myself, it's just so wonderful that I can see the two of you sharing this amazingly unique thing. I'm guessing, you guys are close, right?
Yes, very close.
And so, Anya, how old were you when you started helping your dad with fan films?
Well, I know that when I was, 3, I started, seeing him do, the work, the process, but I started helping probably when I was 5, I'm guessing, because I know that building sets is just another thing about my daily life. It's just like, hey, Dad, are we building a set today? Yeah, okay. And it's normal. It's not, if I'm not building a set, it's just like, I wonder when we're going to build a set.
That's good. Now, when you say building a set, what is that? I mean, you're 10. You started when you were 5. What does building a set look like for Anya?
It's paper and tape. That's basically all it is. But it's boards that just look like random boards. You take stuff out of the closet, you lay everything out, and it's just like you have tape, and then you have these big giant boards, and it's like a regular wall that you have, and then you just build on top of it and build on top of it, and then it looks so different afterwards. It's like in the amount of 5 minutes, the room is already changed. And then after we do that, then we add the details, the big details, and then it just really makes the room feel like a Star Trek set, and that's basically what it is. And then once we build it, we film. Or sometimes we wait a day if we're waiting for somebody else to come. And then, once we take it down, it's kind of sad because you're you've lived 2 days with this set and then you'll never see it again except in a different way with the same boards.
Okay, so once you've done your sets and whatever, what do you do with your boards? Do you, store them, or do you have to just, throw them out to make sure there's still space for you guys to live in?
No, we definitely keep them all because if we kept buying boards, that would be a lot of money because they do get expensive. But, we store them and we save them. And the ones that my dad has are from, a very long time ago. For, my entire life, he's had these boards. And it's And he uses literally anything we can find. And it's the good part. If I had a toy when I was a kid, sometimes I give it to him and then he uses it and then we throw it out or donate or sell it. And we have many different, lights and, little details that just make it feel like a Star Trek set.
I'll tell you a very funny story. Many, many years ago, I think it was in the early 1990s, probably when your dad was, still making his first couple of fan films. I went on a tour of Paramount Pictures, the back lot, and I was walking past. The whole tour was just, walking around or whatever. And I was walking past a door, and huge, huge doors, 3 stories tall, sliding door. And the tour had stopped, and the tour guy was talking about something or other. And my friend and I looked into the slot of the door because it was open just a teeny tiny little bit. And I saw the shuttlecraft from Star Trek V.
Wow.
Just a little piece of it. And I was like, oh my God, I can reach out and touch this.
Wow, that's insane. That's incredible.
I stuck my hand through the door, and it was made of styrofoam. It was a full-size shuttlecraft. I basically was touching the little back fender of it, and I touched it, and it moved. And I was like, oh my God, the whole thing is made out of styrofoam. I could sneak into Paramount in the middle of the night, pick this up over my head, and walk out with it. Really cool. But Paramount never threw anything out either. And eventually they had to auction all the Star Trek stuff off. But it was in this huge warehouse a la the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark of all of the Star Trek stuff. You've probably seen it when they talked about the Christie's auctions with just like boxes and boxes and boxes just going back as far as the eye could see. So I can see you guys eventually, being in that point where you have to buy like a second house for all of your boards and your sets.
Yeah.
That's an awesome story, Jonathan. That's great. That's a really cool thing. I got a little trivia for you. On Star Trek V, they had done the special effects here from New York, and I actually knew the guys that worked in the special effects house. And I actually got a piece of the ship, like the Voyager-type ship that the Klingon blew up. I actually got a piece of it, and that was made out of balsa wood, tin foil, and some other material. So I actually have an actual piece from Star Trek V. And the funniest thing was when they were actually designing that scene, I was lucky enough to make a suggestion, which they ended up pretty much using, which was the Klingon ship coming into view and spinning almost like on an axis before firing. And that's a true story. I actually got to suggest that, and because I knew the guys, they seemed to take it seriously. And when I saw the movie, I kind of felt, hey, I know that scene,
That's pretty cool. I mean, the only thing is you're bragging about something having to do with Star Trek V, but what are you going to do?
You know what? I have such a soft spot for that film. I guess because I did know people behind the scenes on that one. And I do love character-centric stories. I just think Star Trek V, like when I've seen some fan film edits, when they added better special effects, it really does strengthen it. And if they had allowed William Shatner to put the ending in that he wanted, it would have been a much better film. But I always love Star Trek V. I'll take it any day over the new stuff that they're doing these days. It's just Discovery and Picard and all those. I've lost the magic for me a little bit. I would take a Star Trek V any day because at least it's got heart and characters which are true to Gene Roddenberry's kind of, mythos.
So, Anya, do you, or I guess I should ask George this question, does Anya watch Discovery or Picard, or is that a little too adult for her 10-year-old ears?
Yeah, sadly, they've decided to use adult language in those shows, and I always like to vet thing. Discovery and Picard, they're not the optimistic, happy Star Trek that's very family friendly, and not that I'm against them exploring new options, but it's decidedly adult, and Anya's too young for that kind of thing, and again, I think our hearts and Anya by default lies with the classic series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. The classic era of Star Trek.
And Anya, what would you say is your favorite Star Trek series of all the ones that you watched?
Definitely the original series because I just love the characters so much. I love Kirk and I love Spock and I love Scotty and Sulu and everybody. They have that magic, and the fact that was made so long ago I can appreciate because it's amazing how something so old can still be so magical today.
I feel the same way, actually. I so love sharing the original series with Jaden. He was like 4 and 5 years old when we first started watching Star Trek together. And he loved Star Wars, too. One day he actually said, Daddy, I think I like Star Wars better than Star Trek. And he said that almost like, it was the worst thing he could possibly say to me. And I'm like, hey. I said, that's okay. As long as you like Star Trek, I'm fine with it. You can like Star Wars more. And we watch them in order. So we've watched the original series now, and we've moved on to Star Trek: The Next Generation. We're in season 5, and he still likes the original series better. He likes those characters better for whatever reason, and I'm fine with that. My favorite series actually is Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, because I think I got older and I appreciated certain aspects of it more. But I still have a soft spot in my heart for the original series. I don't think you can go around not feeling a special something for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, the funny thing is, I find that most people that like the original series these days, they're almost apologetic about it. It's almost like, well, it's from the 1960s. It's still great, but, it's very old. And I don't agree with that at all. Just because the show shows a certain type of future doesn't mean that you have to apologize for it. If that was Gene Roddenberry's take in the 1960s about 300 years in our future, and it's so beloved and it's lasted all this time, then there's something magical about that. And you shouldn't have to apologize for it. And I know sometimes people say, well, a show is of its time, but I don't agree with that. Again, you don't have to like everything about it, but I think a show can be true to itself, and look how much work spawned from it. It's not a coincidence or a mystery why my series is set in that time. To me, it really was the classic science fiction Wild West mentality where story and characters came first and not any kind of agendas like they do today. Star Trek can comment. If you look at the classic series, the characters always dealt with problems in almost a neutral way. It was the aliens they encountered that were the subject, whether it was about racism or the Vietnam War. It was how our characters dealt with it. And today, the series they're much more shallow. The characters are very preachy. They just spell things out, and they're not nice people. These are not people that are exploring with open hearts. It's almost like there's a very dark agenda now because it's people they feel won't take it seriously. And I truly miss the optimism of the original series and the Next Generation. And I love Deep Space Nine, and they did dark very well. It was a very serialized and incredibly complex story, and I did appreciate it. But I think, if I had to be honest, the original series, that optimism, those characters, that's where my heart is.
That's the Star Trek you can watch with your kids. I'm very hopeful right now. I saw the announcement for Strange New Worlds recently, and, I think CBS is finally starting to learn the lesson. I think CBS realized very quickly that they'd screwed up with Discovery. And I think the course corrections of Season 2 acknowledged that, okay, Season 1 was just way, way, way too dark. Didn't have, any laugh moments, didn't have any lighter characters. We screwed up with the Klingons. We're going to make them look, back to the way they normally looked. And a lot of course corrections bringing in, after saying we're not going to have Spock in Discovery, they're bringing in Spock, they're bringing in Pike. They started realizing, okay, we screwed up. And I think with Picard, there was also let's explore doing a different kind of Star Trek, and let's hew a little more closely to canon, in that we're going to really acknowledge everything from Next Generation. We're going to go forward from it, and we're going to, bring in as much canon and keep it consistent as we can moving forward with it. And I just sort of feel like Strange New Worlds, now that they're talking about we're going to make it more optimistic, is one of the words that you use, one of the words that they're using, and more episodic. In other words, we're not necessarily going to have a season-long story arc where at the end of it we have every single dollar of our special effects budget, into this, huge season finale. We're going to have a story. It's going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we're going to have another episode with a beginning and then a middle and the end, and maybe certain character arcs are going to go, they didn't want to make it completely episodic where, Kirk loses Edith Keeler at the end of City on the Edge of Forever, and then he's back to normal again at the beginning of the next episode, but they're going to try to at least make the show a little bit closer to what the original Star Trek was, and that's their next experiment. And I'm so surprised at the fans' reactions to this. I mean, some fans are very excited about it, and some fans are like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, and I'm just going to get on Facebook and talk about what a horrible company CBS is.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I'm holding out hope that they're going back into the right direction. I will say they trapped themselves with Discovery in the beginning, because once you say it's 10 years before Kirk and Spock, and then you decide to ignore canon, that's at your own peril. It got to the point where they launched Discovery 1,000 years into the future now. They got so fed up with it. At least Picard dealt with the future of the future. So I would cut it some more slack at least, because it was definitely a new period of time that we hadn't seen before, and I love Patrick Stewart so much. So Picard decidedly was a better series, but still they were making the same mistakes as far as tonality and this kind of despair, this malaise over everything that was cutting at the heart of Star Trek. So I completely agree with you about the new series as far as if they head in that optimistic direction, make it more episodic, that could be a wonderful thing.
Well, here's hoping. I'm one of those, Star Trek is optimism. I'm going to be optimistic. Until CBS screws this up, I am not going to predict that CBS is going to screw this up. And if they do screw it up, well, then fool me 3 times and, shame on all of us.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I guess coming back to the other point, that's why the fan films, we kind of keeping the flame alive, because no matter what direction, the intellectual property owners decide to go, we'll still be kind of keeping the flame alight, as far as our core values, what we think Star Trek is. And so, there's room for everyone. You're not forced to watch anything, whether it's our work or their work,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I love Star Trek fan films is, we're doing Star Trek the way we want to for us, not the way we want to for other people who watch our fan films. I mean, I hope that people like Interlude when they finally see it. But that being said, if they don't like it, that's okay. I made it for me. I made it for the experience of creating a fan film. That was an itch I had to scratch. And it sounds like, you're constantly itching. Because you've made how many episodes of Starship Antyllus now?
Well, I mean, because there's a couple of two-parters, there's always a debate about how many actual episodes. I think there's like 19 episodes, but as far as the actual number, we just posted up episode 15.
Wow, that's quite a lot. And your episodes are kind of long. The guidelines say 30 minutes total, but you're like, oh, what the hell?
Well, the thing is, the first 9 episodes were done before the fan guidelines even came out. So I was operating in the glory time when there was no restrictions whatsoever. And then when the restrictions came out, I had already filmed like the next 2 or 3 episodes anyway. And no matter how you break it up, in other words, even if I sliced it down to 15-minute segments, it's still breaking one of their violations, which is continuing a story. So, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So at that point, I was like, listen, I'm just going to keep posting my episodes. I'm not making any waves. I changed the title of my show. I have no professional, actors from the actual Star Trek series. I bought all the props, and the stuff you see in the episodes are from, the official products. So I'm following the rules as much as I can. And, I can't imagine them looking at me as any kind of threat, I have a small but very loyal audience, and I think it would actually be a detriment to them if they shut us down, because we're the ones keeping the fandom alive in a way. And, of course, high-profile Star Trek projects scared them, I think, because the numbers were so great, the level of professionalism was so amazing that they saw that as direct competition. I don't think they look at my paper and tape sets and say, oh, they're going to confuse the people out there with our $35 million an episode budget, So I think it's good being a small fish. I'm not trying to make any waves. I love Star Trek. I support Star Trek in the professional sense. So I think it's all good, and I am trying to follow the guidelines as much as I can. I'm not thumbing my nose at them in any way. I am trying to be a team player in so much as I can be.
Yeah, as I said to Glenn Wolfe in a recent audio interview with him about the Federation files, I don't think you're the droids they're looking for. They're not going to see Starship Antyllus and think that people are going to confuse it for Star Trek in the marketplace. And I think for the most part, CBS doesn't even want the hassle of having to take time away from profit-making endeavors. I mean, licensing people are very, very busy, and the lawyers are very, very busy. And the last thing that they want to do is to waste time telling a fan project, you need to shut down. And, of course, all of the horrible PR that comes with that.
Well, the other thing is, to be fair to myself, it's my own ship. It's my own characters. I'm not really using anything that they're currently doing. It's not about Kirk or Spock or the Enterprise. It's, the only thing is it's in their playground as far as the Federation and starships, but the Antyllus is even a made-up ship. It's not in any series that's ever been shown. So I think I'm as original as I can be and still be part of the Star Trek universe.
And Antyllus is named after, I had to look this up, you're named after like a 2nd century Greek medical person, right?
Yes, exactly.
I always wondered about that. It's like Antyllus, that's like a weird name. No, actually there was a healer who worked with aneurysms. Apparently that was what Antyllus did. back in 200 AD or something like that. So I had to look that up. Anyway, let's get back to Starship Antyllus. When last we were chatting, we were talking about your sets.
And another thing, Jonathan, since you mentioned sets, one of the things that we work on is the fact that we build it with the camera on, because what actually counts is how the camera perceives the set. So if you were to stand in the set with us, your eye might pick up a lot of flaws, or it might not look as impressive. But if you look through the camera, it looks a lot more alive. It's the way we light it, the way we build it. I always build it with the camera on, so I know what I'm getting.
Now, when you say when the camera on, you mean the camera is turned on looking at the set, so you're always going back to the camera, not that the camera is built connected to the set.
Exactly. Yeah, we leave the camera on tied to a monitor, so as I'm building the set, I can actually see how it looks, and then Anya and I will stand around different areas of the set to see, what areas look best for the actors and things like that.
All right, so let's get back to Anya, because Anya, you are absolutely adorable, and honestly, you are an amazingly impressive, I won't even say little girl at this point. I mean, you're 10 years old. You're a kid now. You're coming into yourself. So obviously, you do more for Antyllus than just build sets. You said, you help with the scripts, and you're both behind the camera and in front of the camera. So I want to know more about what you do for this fan film series that you and your dad, in a lot of ways do together.
Well, first of all, thank you for all those kind words about me. And second of all, I do a lot. As soon as I was able to, my dad gave me the camera, which was 2 years ago, I think now. And if my mom's not available or no one else is available, I film him sometimes with handheld. And I always look behind the camera. I do script continuity and make sure he gets the lines right, because there's so much going on in our lives that sometimes we can just not remember our lines, and so I always have to help him. And
the fact that you, as a 10-year-old, know the word script continuity and then know what it is, I just wanted to say that's impressive.
Thank you.
And by the way, can you tell everybody what it is you do when you do script continuity? What is it that you, Anya, are doing to make sure that the lines are right?
So I hold the script. I take the script that my dad printed out, and I place it down on the floor. That's because you don't want to creak and make sound. So I sit on the floor, and I look at the script, and then I tell my dad the line, or whoever's there, and then if they don't get it right or they're having trouble remembering it, I go, okay, this is the line. I tell them the line, and then they sometimes need to repeat, and sometimes, I flub words, and then they need to look at the script because, I'm only 10 and I don't know every single word in the universe. But, but yeah, that's basically all I do for script continuity. And I also, when we're editing, I hold the script next to my dad, and so we make sure we get the right lines because, sometimes we film out of order. Okay,
cool. So what else do you do? I mean, it sounds like you do so much. I mean, with fan films, obviously, there's a lot of hats that are worn by a lot of people, but, not necessarily by 10-year-old girls. So what else are you doing in a typical episode?
So with my dad, I usually help. I'm always there when he's filming. I'm his production assistant ever since I was 5. And I encourage the actors just like he does. Well, that's basically on set and stuff, but I help get props. And when we're, editing, I pick the right take because, sometimes you need another person's opinion, not just your own. And so my dad asks me, hey, Anya, what do you think, this one or this one? And I say, which one? And he's like, good, I think that fits. And that's the editing process. I'm always there. It takes hours, but I really don't care because when I have spare time, I like doing it. I like seeing the process because I plan on, when I'm older, making projects like mine, maybe not fan films, but maybe other projects. Because I know my dad started out with making different things. And that's what, I plan on doing when I'm older, a little older, or maybe in a year or two, so.
Yeah, a little older. I mean, it sounds like you're already doing it. Why wait until, you're 20 or 30? You might as well start becoming a filmmaker now.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting question, George, and I realize I never asked you, what do you do for a living other than making these fan films?
Oh, as far as a job goes, I'm a graphic designer, and I help write scripts. I'm what they call a script doctor. So I actually do professional productions. People will send me early versions of their script. They'll ask me to, punch up the dialogue. Sometimes it's for animated projects. And, once I do my job of it, sometimes those projects just kind of vanish on their own because they go out of my hands. They're not my productions. So, yeah, I'm a graphic designer. I do a lot of storyboards for films. I do the poster work. I do, a lot of movies that feature pictures of, family members and things like that. That's all me from Photoshop. They'll give me all the material, and I'll do all those things. Art you see on the walls, because I also paint and illustrate. So I guess overall, it's most of the artwork in film production is what I do.
Oh, that's cool. So you've done other filmmaking as well. Anya was saying you're not just doing Star Trek fan films. What else have you done?
Yeah, well, in the 1980s, my first big project was a giant 6-part series called Honor Bound. It was actually kind of a soap opera, and it had over 300 people in it, and it was a very convoluted story about friendship, government agents, mafia-type bad guys. And, yeah, it was a huge project. It was a 6-year project of my life, and it's been a pretty huge success. And then I recently reposted the whole thing on YouTube on my channel to kind of introduce it to a whole new world, because the 1980s literally is like another world now. It's been so long. I also do a lot of Twilight Zone type stories. I'm really into psychological horror. So like my movie Fragments is total psychological horror. I'm also like The Man in the Hallways, another film, very Twilight Zone-like. So as much as I love Star Trek, and it's certainly my most popular work, if you looked on my channel, you would see a lot of diverse other things too. And science fiction in general is where my heart is. I absolutely love, sci-fi and Twilight Zonian type things. And then to be completely honest, I also have an extremely zany side, almost slapstick and crazy. So if you saw like one of my movies like Bus or Sid's Complaint, those are really crazy. They're very, very silly. I guess you would call them silly comedies. And it's on the extreme other side of the spectrum for me. So, it's to keep myself interested, to do a heavy drama followed by a crazy comedy. It just keeps me interested. And now I've been doing it since 1978, and so I can't believe it.
Well, how old were you in 1978?
Let's see. I was, hold on, 6 plus 10. I was 14.
Oh, you got to do the math for this, huh?
Math is my Achilles heel.
My wife, I was 11 in 1978. See, I just did that. Go ahead. How old were you?
I was 14. My wife's a math teacher and a genius with that. So, yeah, I'm not a numbers guy. But, yeah, I was 14 and it was with a Super 8 silent camera. I borrowed my dad's camera. And I started animating it with clay and things like that. And then finally I was kind of a shy kid, believe it or not. So I didn't get actors till about 2 years after I started making movies. By the time I was 16, I was actually filming live action stuff.
Wow, I had no idea that your itch went this deep, George. That's very impressive that you started so early and then you've kept up with it. So it sounds like Anya, you sound like you've got that in your blood now. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Okay, so George talked. I want to get back to Anya because you're really the star of this interview, Anya. So I want to hear more about, speaking of Twilight Zone, your latest episode, which was the House
on the Water. House on the Water.
House on the Water. Thank you very much. That was, I think, the first time, or maybe the second time, I saw Anya as Anya, as opposed to, when you're, what's the character you play?
Sharb.
Sharb, that's it, yes. So usually you have that alien mask on, so nobody knows that, you're just a little kid. But now you got your chance to really show your acting chops, and I have to say that you were spectacular in it. I mean, really, really good. So how did you prepare for that part? I mean, you had so many lines to learn and so many scenes.
Well, it started with just, when I was younger, I've always been the acting one. my entire family loves singing and acting and, being crazy and creative. So I've always loved and enjoyed acting. And so my dad said, I have this idea. I've had this idea for a while, and I want to make an episode called The House in the Water. And I'm like, okay, cool. And he told me about it, and I was like, good. And so I just prepared myself by just saying, well, I need to come up with a character that isn't just me, because I'm a really happy, cheery person. I'm always smiling. I'm always singing. I'm always dancing. And so for a more serious show like my dad's, I wanted to come up with a character that was kind of the opposite of me, more mysterious, more dark, more different. And so when we started filming, I just tried to be as different as I could be. And then once we started filming, I didn't remember any of the lines. I read the script, I did everything, but I could not remember any of my lines. So we had to do it piece by piece. The day of filming, I had to look at the script, and then I had to say it, and then I messed up, and so I had to look back at the script, and then say it, and mess up again, because I could not get any of the lines in my head. And then finally, in the end, we did everything, and I was like, phew. And after filming, we started editing, and after I did a few times of filming, I was like, okay, I got my character down. And then we did on-location stuff, and everything. And once we were done, it was just like, that was a lot of work. But I just said to myself, be confident, and who cares if you mess up, because it's going to be edited out anyway. And my dad loves bloopers, and I love bloopers. So that's basically how I prepared for my role.
How long did you actually spend filming? You said it was just one day, or did you do it over the course of a few days?
Many, many days. So each scene was basically a different day of filming. So we did one day in the house, and then another day in the house, and then on location and in different places. And so it was a few hours a day, because I could not do a full thing. Because if it takes 2 hours to get a 5-minute scene done, then there's no chance of us getting a 48-minute episode in one day. That would take way too long. And so...
And you also have school, I mean, you've got, fourth grade are you in at this point?
Fourth grade. So, I had school, and so after school, it's like, okay, Anya, get into the set, let's go. I'm like, okay.
When do you do your homework in the midst of all of this if you're busy filming after school?
So I usually do my homework later at night, just because I don't have the time, because I'm either filming, or I'm eating, or I'm writing something, because I like to be creative just like my dad, and I write different things. And so I want to make sure I get everything out. So I usually do that first, and then I do my homework later, probably mostly after dinner, and then I do my homework. And it's easy enough for me, because I remember the funny part is I remember lots of schoolwork, but I can never remember my lines. So, but I can just do my homework and be like, okay, yeah, I'm done, I got everything correct, and just be like, that's done, my day's done, now I'm going to go to bed.
I remember when I used to have that much energy. Yeah, I think, it was the 1990s, yeah. Yes, enjoy it now, little girl. But no, that sounds fantastic. So you write other stuff. What else do you write, Anya?
Well, let's just start with the beginning. I have my own little project that I've been doing. I have my friends in it, and we act. We come up with a story, we act, and we have fun, and that's a lot of bloopers as well. And it's called Anya and Friends. I have been working on it for 4 years now, so it's been a very long time.
What is it called again?
Anya and Friends.
Anya and Friends. Okay.
And then I also write novels.
You write novels?
Yeah, I write short stories, chapter books. I take some after I read, I sometimes take the book inspiration and I make it my own, every book I take, I remember it, and I'm like, how can I write a book that not similar but inspired by, and make it like kind of like a smash hit, just like the books were. And so I take I take the computer, I plug it in, and I sit down at my seat, and I just start writing and writing and writing. And once I'm done, I'm like, I got a chapter.
Well, that's the way you do it, yeah. you write until you stop, and then if it's not good, you write some more. I remember, I think it was Harlan Ellison, who's a very famous writer, wrote a Star Trek episode and a whole bunch of different books. In fact, I think he wrote faster than I could read. But Harlan once said, look, just write. It doesn't matter what you write. The stuff that you write could be, I'm not going to use a word that I can't use around a 10-year-old, but the stuff you could write could be that. And it doesn't matter because you just throw it out and you write more and you keep writing more and eventually you write gold. That's the thing. If you can write until you're done, you write until you're done. Then you write some more the next day. Okay, so Anya, you are an aspiring filmmaker. You're an aspiring novelist. What else do you like to do?
I like to sing. I write some of my own songs. I also like to sing any song. That's basically all that I do half the time. Whether I'm like solving a math problem, doing schoolwork, or like trying to fall asleep, or like taking a nap, I'm singing. That's what I do. I also really like to read. I have a lot of books, although I can't beat my daddy at that because he has so many that one day I'll read, but not yet, obviously. But I have many books. I've read most of them. But I just love to read. I do things online sometimes if I can't get the book. But I also, own many books, and I love reading them because it's a fun hobby to do.
Well, that's true. I mean, I love to read. My son Jaden, not so much. He'll read when he has to. But, he's only in third grade. He's a good reader. He just doesn't necessarily like it. But that's okay because he can build a robot like the best of them. So all kids have their own little thing that they do really well, the thing that makes them sparkle. But Anya, you are such an impressive kid, I have to say. So what does the future at this point look like for Starship Antyllus? I'll ask both of you guys.
Well, we have plans for the final 2 episodes, but we don't really know because it was supposed to be, 20 episodes in all, not like counting the 2-parters. But now, since we have quarantine and everything, we're seeing what we can do. And so there's probably going to end up being more than we intended.
How do you make an episode if you have to socially distance from everybody?
Well, Jonathan, the way I work is I always film, when I have my actors together, I always film 3 or 4 episodes worth of material whenever I get my people together. So I actually have bits and pieces for the next 10 episodes, but the social distancing has put a kibosh because it's like having a puzzle where you're missing a few key pieces. So the challenge right now is to take what I've already shot, and I need to figure out what I need to shoot now to put out a full episode. So that's where the challenge comes in. Ironically enough, when the quarantine was put into place, I actually had enough material, which is why I got episode 14 and 15 out so quickly. The current episode I'm working on and the next 2 are about 80% done with each episode, but I have to still solve that 20%, missing part. So, it's done through writing. It's done through whatever footage I have. And you remember, because my show is serialized, I try to tell more of the story per episode, try to move the story forward. Yeah, it's been a challenge. No, I can't lie to you. It's been challenging, but I can say hopefully within 2 weeks we'll get the next episode out. And then after that, if I'm smart and I really dig in deep, I think I can get 2 more episodes out. After that, I'm really, really, really going to have to see where I'm at. So I'd say I'm safe for the next 3 episodes, but then after that, I'm going to have to really figure out where I stand.
My goodness. Well, pace yourself. You don't have to put out an episode every week or 2, and put out one a month or once every 2 months or whatever, and, we'll watch them. We're in no rush.
Well, you know what it is? I never feel pressure to get the episodes out. I mean, basically, these are my children being born, and they take as long as they take. But because of the quarantine, I've actually been able to devote a lot more time to my work. Normally I'm lucky I can grab a few hours here and there. And now, because we're all at home, it's really become my kind of primary source, for not only my creativity, but my time. So it's weird. It's almost like having a meal, and maybe originally you took 1 or 2 bites and you spread the meal out. And now I have nothing but time to eat the meal, And so the meal is going away really quickly, and I have to think, what else am I going to put on the plate now?
Well, it's during this pandemic, there's a lot of extra time to do a lot of things, and it's kind of funny because, at least for me, I've never been so busy as I've been during this quarantine because, I have to help Jaden with his school during the day, still blogging a lot and, trying to keep up with the stuff that is happening. And then, of course, you're trying to also keep up with television, and binge watching things. But, I'm doing less of that than I thought because I've been so busy doing other things. And
I'm very impressed with you, Jonathan, because you're getting a lot of things done. You always do things so well. You're definitely an inspiration. I mean, as far as what I do, I've found that I need to divide my time and give myself a schedule. Otherwise, things kind of just not get done. So I'll wake up in the morning, I'll do my writing or editing in the morning. Then my set building and filming takes place in the afternoon and evening. And then sometimes I just need to walk away for a little bit. So then I'll paint. I'm working on a couple of paintings right now. So I'll devote the next day to reading and painting, and then I get back into it, So I find by giving myself a schedule, I get things done, and I don't feel like I'm wasting time, if you know what I mean. I feel like I'm getting my stuff done.
Well, that's good. I mean, I think we all, like our routines. I was watching an episode of The Punisher, and of all things, and he was talking about in the torture of prisoners, the way you break them down is you take away their routines. He said humans are always craving routines. So if you don't know when your next meal is happening or when you're going to be able to sleep or when day is or when night is, you start breaking down. You start losing all hope. And I thought to myself, because now we're in a pandemic and we're kind of all, in a way, we're kind of prisoners. And I think, we're looking for the new normal. We're looking for our routines, our new routines, and my routine is I will go to the supermarket 1 day a week, and, my routine is, getting the gloves out and getting the mask on, and planning it for the end of the week for when, I've worn my pair of pants for enough days in a row that I can come home and immediately put it into the washing machine because Wendy will not allow me to wear clothes that I've worn to the supermarket. When I get home, I go right upstairs and put them into the washing machine and, take my shower. So, that's the new routine. So I think we all are, searching for our new routines right now.
I don't know how you feel, too, as far as, getting things done. It's almost like a thirst or an itch, as you said earlier. So for me, I have such equal passions that I need to, do things. Like, I need to read, right? That's just part and parcel of who I am. So if I don't read, I start really feeling that. So again, if I schedule myself some reading time, it satisfies that. And then the same with my painting or my drawing. If I give myself time to do it, I feel good about it, and I don't feel like I'm missing something. And the same thing with the filming, whether it's writing, filming, or building sets. But without that schedule or that new routine, like you said, nothing gets done because you start to kind of chase your tail. You're like, I should read. Oh, no, I should write. I should film. And, it all becomes one big blur. So that's what I do. I just divide my days into definite things. Now, obviously, when you're filming, if it spills over into a time you reserve for something else, well, then that makes sense to keep filming, I'll just make sure I give myself that reading time the next day or something. And that's just the way I work. I need some kind of boundaries to get things done because my personality is like that. Like jack of all trades type of thing, it's like if I could do everything simultaneously, I would, but that's just not feasible.
Yes, I think we're all finding our new normal right now. So to wrap up the call, I want to ask you I think what is the most important question that everybody really wants to know, what about Mrs. Kayan? What does she think about all this?
There's a certain caveat with that question, which is, let me just a little background first so you'll understand where we're coming from. My wife is every bit the actress and performer. She's like classically trained. She's very, when I met her, it was actually for one of my films. That's how we met. So she has an incredible passion for anything to do with the arts. But when we got married, we needed the extra salary, and my wife sacrificed her art to become a math teacher. She had a math background. She was really good at it, but she got her teaching certificate and literally sacrificed all her artistic ambitions to bring in, money for the family. So she's really the breadwinner of the family. She is the foundation, the rock on which this family survives. So having said that, sometimes it's really difficult when she sees how much time these projects take. So she's supportive of it, but, very often it's almost a feeling of, I wish I could be doing something creative. I wish I could be on stage doing my plays. So, it's just human nature as far as when you see someone, like, say, living out their dream, and you kind of know that you sacrificed your dream to allow them to do that. So that's why it's a tricky question, So she'll bust my chops every now and then about it, but she never, ever has asked me to stop. And I think she does love the fact that Anya is a part of the process because she sees the joy that it brings us. So that's why it's a tricky question.
No, that's okay. Actually, you know what? It's very similar to the situation here in the Lane House. My wife is a lawyer. She works very, very, very hard. She's working until midnight every day because she's a labor lawyer, which means, during the pandemic, it's crazy because companies are having to furlough people. They're having to fire people for their own good so that they can make unemployment. And now that California is starting to open up again, she's now, writing pretty much morning, noon, and night new regulations and guidelines for coming back. If you have a fever, you can't come in. You have to wear the mask. You have to keep the social distance. She's writing this stuff for all of her clients, and she's working so hard. Me, I have a couple of little part-time jobs. I've been, before the pandemic started, I'd started circulating my resumes to people. I'm still doing that, but, no one is hiring anybody. And, the few people that are getting inundated with, probably thousands and thousands of resumes. So most of the things I send out aren't really happening. So, at this point, I am helping Jaden with school. That's kind of my job. And then also I do the blog, which, brings in maybe $1 a day in advertising, which isn't very much, and Wendy notices it. But, she is also the foundation of the family right now. She's, keeping us in a home as opposed to in a box on the street. And I feel the same, sadness and frustration that I can't provide more. And, she's let me make my fan film. At the end of Interlude, you will see a special thank you to Wendy at the end.
Nice.
She's never really thrilled about Star Trek fan films. It's not really her thing. She's not a Trekkie. She's not a sci-fi fan. And, she let me make Interlude. Get this out of your system. This is going to be your one and done. I'm not sure she's going to be as supportive if I try to do this again. So, enjoy Interlude, folks. But, I was kind of curious because obviously, you were spending a lot of time on your fan film, and, we don't see your wife very often, either, on camera in your credits. So I was kind of curious about that. And, I realized that, it's tough, but at the same point in time, this is, as you said, it's providing such a unique experience for Anya. I think she's already, I think, has the building blocks of greatness in her. Anya, just have to say that again. You're so impressive that anything you can do as a father and you guys can do as parents to nurture this natural creativity in your daughter, I think is just going to pay amazing dividends in the end.
I agree with you. I do. And it's funny because people automatically assume that Anya loves Star Trek and she makes film simply because I do, like as if I apprenticed her right away. And the truth was I never did. I never approached her officially and said, you're going to help me build a set or you're going to help me film or, she gravitated towards me doing it. She was interested through me, but she's taken the ball and run with it. I mean, she goes and writes her novels, her teleplays. She just made a short film the other day. She has her own YouTube channel. It's amazing, and it's not for me. Like I might have influenced her just by default, but it would be unfair to her to say she's simply following in my footsteps because I'm doing it. Maybe in the beginning the curiosity factor was there, but seriously, when we watch a show together, she will point out continuity errors. It has nothing to do with, it's not my project. It's the professionally made shows. And she'll notice different lengths of liquid in glasses. She'll notice the hands are in the wrong position over the shoulder shot. And she'll point this out to me. I won't say it to her, So we actually have entire conversations about film production on an equal level. I mean, she's 10 years old going on 20,
Yeah, at least. And definitely a continuity editor in the birthing at this point. Oh, not even the birthing. You are a continuity editor. That sounds like it. Okay, well, George, Anya, I have to thank you both so much. This has been a wonderful, wonderful interview. Anya, I think until my son turns 10, you were like my favorite 10-year-old.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Really do appreciate it. As you know, even, making your film, you want people to know about it because you put your love and heart into something. And, of course, any kind of validation is manner to an artist's soul, So we really do appreciate you giving us a shout-out. And we're so proud of you. We can't wait to see your film. And like I said, you're part of our film family by extension. So we thank you.
All righty. Well, thanks all around then, guys. Best of luck to you getting your next few Starship Antyllus children born. And Anya, just, keep making the stuff, keep writing the stuff, keep creating, because it's stuff that you're ultimately going to be able to share with others. And that's the whole reason that people want to create.
Thank you for saying that. I will continue on doing what I'm doing. And just thank you for this interview because I enjoyed it.
Well, I enjoyed it too. All right, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye, Jonathan. Bye. Thank you.